The opulent airport VIP lounge hummed. Co-pilot David, a single father, stood near his worn flight bag. Amelia Vance, the CEO's formidable representative, approached, her posture radiating icy authority. "Mr. Reyes, we don't need you on this flight," she spoke with chilling finality. Nearby pilots exchanged smug glances. David, accustomed to being overlooked, nodded and turned to walk away, his daughter Luna drawing quietly. Suddenly, the announcement board flickered. "Aircraft delayed. Owner requested." Amelia frowned, demanding, "Owner?" Staff, faces pale, looked past her, their eyes locked on the man she had just rejected. He turned utterly serene and signed the clipboard. The room froze solid. David Reyes was, by all appearances, unremarkable. To the corporate world of Novatech Aviation, he was simply a name on a contract manifest, a freelance co-pilot who filled in last-minute slots. His uniform, though clean, lacked the crisp, tailored perfection of the full-time, high-salaried staff. He wore no flashy pilot watch. His gear was old, functional, and deeply familiar. He was a creature of necessity and routine, his life molded around the unpredictable demands of raising his daughter Luna alone. He possessed an immense amount of documented flight hours, far exceeding the younger staff, yet his contract status marked him as perpetually temporary. His wife Maria, a talented aeronautical engineer, had died unexpectedly 5 years ago in a non-aviation-related accident. Maria hadn't just been an engineer. She was a specialist in legacy airframe modernization and worked directly on the very class of mid-sized jets Novatech now leased. The tragedy shattered David, but it also crystallized his focus. He left the high-pressure, fixed-schedule world of major commercial carriers, choosing instead the fragmented, flexible contract work that allowed him to be home when Luna needed him. He chose flexibility over prestige, sanity over a career ladder. His pay was less, his status was lower, but his time with Luna was guaranteed. This to David was the only currency that mattered. He found a profound, quiet strength in being present for her, a strength that easily absorbed the casual corporate cruelty he often faced. "Luna, remember what Dad told you about silence," he whispered to his daughter just moments before his scheduled brief. Luna, nestled near the window with her sketch pad, looked up, her expression serious. "That silence is not weakness, Dad. It's control." David smiled. He needed her to believe that, because his life often required him to absorb slights and rejections with quiet dignity. He was a professional in the truest sense, possessing thousands of hours of flight time, often handling the difficult, forgotten routes. His experience in crisis management was vast, forged in the unpredictable skies of international cargo, but his resume lacked the sleek, Ivy League polish that modern corporate aviation often fetishized. His only goal was smooth air and a prompt return to Luna. The aircraft scheduled for today's flight was a critical, high-profile charter, a mid-sized luxury jet carrying Novatech's most important clients, a group of venture capitalists poised to fund the company's next massive expansion, to a major tech conference. The CEO had explicitly tasked Amelia Vance with ensuring absolute perfection. Everything about the flight had to be flawless, reflecting the brand's obsession with optics and control. Amelia knew that securing this funding hinged not just on the pitch, but on the effortless presentation of corporate mastery, starting with the transport. Enter Amelia Vance, the Vice President of Strategic Operations and the CEO's representative on this charter. Amelia was a force of nature, young, brilliant, armed with an MBA from Harvard, and defined by her absolute commitment to image. She viewed the world through the lens of data and branding. For her, a pilot was not just a pair of hands on the yoke. He was an extension of the corporate profile. David's lack of fit felt like a direct threat to her meticulously planned presentation. She had reviewed the manifest that morning and immediately flagged David. His file was functionally fine, but his status as a contractor and his simple uniform, the lack of brand allegiance, was unacceptable. The sight of his very visible presence as a single parent with a child, albeit a quiet, well-behaved child, in the VIP lounge grated on her sense of decorum. He was an aesthetic liability in a high-stakes corporate environment. "We need a co-pilot who reflects the caliber of our clientele, Mr. Reyes," she had said, not unkindly, but with the chilling impersonality of a machine. "I've swapped you for Mr. Sterling. Full-time, highly polished, no distractions. The impression matters." David simply absorbed the rejection. He felt the familiar pang of being judged by everything but his competence. He knew Amelia saw the old flight bag and the contract status, not the pilot who had navigated a Category 3 hurricane on a fuel delivery run 3 years prior. He didn't argue. An argument would mean drama, and drama meant a disruption that would draw attention to Luna. He simply accepted the clipboard she offered, signed the cancellation form, and prepared to leave. "Understood, Ms. Vance. I wish the crew a smooth flight," he said, his voice calm, the perfect picture of an easily dismissed substitute. He turned toward his daughter, the contract severance signed, sealed, and delivered. The palpable atmosphere in the lounge, a mixture of pity from the junior staff and smug superiority from the full-time pilots, was a weight he was used to carrying. He often mused on the irony. He could fly this jet on a wing and a prayer through a blizzard, yet he was dismissed for the crease in his trousers. Little did they know, this quiet man's relationship with the plane, the very machine they were all waiting on, was something deeper, something completely outside their corporate understanding. He was the ghost in the machine, and they were about to feel his presence. As David prepared to gather Luna and leave, a shrill, piercing tone erupted from the maintenance desk near the hangar entrance, a sound that instantly cut through the lounge's sophisticated calm. It was the Level 3 technical alert for the very aircraft they were chartering. The red light on the dashboard of the maintenance terminal flashed aggressively, pulsing in sync with the alarm. Chaos, contained and professional, immediately began to simmer. The quiet veneer of corporate efficiency shattered. The lead flight crew, including the captain and the newly appointed co-pilot, Mr. Sterling, rushed to the maintenance screen. The captain, a stern older man named Hughes, read the error code aloud, his voice tight with alarm. "Engine turbine intake sensor calibration error. Critical system. Requires immediate owner override or a full diagnostic delay." A tense technical argument immediately broke out among the ground engineers and the flight crew. Mr. Sterling, the replacement co-pilot, offered textbook solutions that everyone knew would take hours. "We have to follow the manufacturer's protocol, Captain. Full rollback and recalibration of the FADEC system. There's no way around the liability." The lead engineer countered, "That's a 4-hour procedure. We have a narrow slot. If we miss it, we lose the runway clearance and the VIPs will walk." The conflicting advice led only to escalating anxiety and a worsening delay. David, standing silently by the window, heard the specific technical details, the model number, the sensor readings, and his mental gears began to turn. Amelia Vance, who had been fielding frantic calls from her CEO, slammed her phone onto the desk. The pressure was immense. The VIP clients were already murmuring and threatening to move their party to a competing airline's waiting jet. "Hughes, you have 10 minutes. Fix it. The CEO is on a call with the board. This charter cannot be canceled. My career is tied to this departure time." The chief maintenance officer, a gray-haired veteran named Finn, rubbed his temples. He knew the drill. This specific model often triggered false positives under specific humidity conditions, but the protocol was ironclad. "Ms. Vance, the protocol is clear. For a critical alert of this nature, we must have the owner's verbal and digital confirmation for any non-standard fix. It's liability. The owner's emergency line is the only way to get the override code. We cannot touch the software without it." Amelia's face hardened, her patience completely gone. "The owner never shows up, Finn. That plane is held by a shell corporation. We've been leasing it for 2 years, and I've never seen a single human face associated with the lease. It's a trust fund in the Caymans? Get a quick fix, or I'll find someone who can." Her assumption was absolute. The owner was a faceless investment firm, untouchable and irrelevant, only concerned with the bottom line. She started pacing, furiously scrolling through her contact list for a specialized third-party repair crew, convinced a high-priced expert could solve the simple problem. Luna, still sitting quietly by the window, noticed the change in the atmosphere. She saw her father stand still, his eyes focused intently on the maintenance crew's animated debate, his whole body taut. David, having signed himself off the manifest, was now an invisible man, but he was listening intensely. He recognized the error code, E307TSOCP, a sequence that referenced the specific avionics upgrade Maria, his late wife, had helped consult on years ago. He knew the specific aircraft, the subtle whine of its auxiliary power unit, the slight, almost imperceptible tremor in the floor that meant this specific model was running a legacy power modulator. More importantly, he knew the maintenance history of this exact airframe better than anyone in the room, because Maria had kept meticulous notes. The turbine intake sensor error was a known, documented bug related to an older software batch on that particular model's navigation system. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It was a ghost in the code, a simple conflict between the air temperature sensor and the pressure altimeter in humid weather. A quick patch, known only to a few specialists or those with deep institutional knowledge of the refit, would solve it instantly by adjusting a variable, not the hardware. He instinctively took 2 steps toward the clustered crew, his expertise overriding his desire for silence. His voice, calm and cutting through the panic, was startling. "It's a false positive, Captain. The primary sensor data and the tertiary flow rate readings are matching exactly. The disparity is purely software. It's the Z18 patch. It addresses the humidity-induced conflict in the air data computer. It's a 2-minute upload, but you need administrator access to override the FATEC lock." He was interrupted instantly by the sharp metallic voice of Amelia Vance. She spun around, her eyes blazing with corporate fury. "Reyes, I thought I told you to leave. You are off the manifest. You are an unqualified contractor in a critical area. Stay out of the way. Your opinion is not needed. Your input is causing unnecessary confusion." David paused, the professional wall going up again. He felt the cold sting of rejection, but this time it threatened the safety of the flight and the success of the company. Mr. Sterling scoffed loudly, smoothing his expensive suit lapel. "Stay in your lane, Reyes. We handle the real procedures here. This is a liability issue, not a quick fix." David looked at Captain Hughes, trying to convey the urgency with his eyes. Hughes, bound by company protocol and Amelia's authority, simply shook his head apologetically. The minutes dragged on, the digital clock on the maintenance terminal ticking past their scheduled departure. The delay was now official. 2 hours and counting, pushing them into a restricted airspace window. Amelia, pale with mounting dread, grabbed Finn, the maintenance chief. "Call the owner. Get the override. Now!" she hissed, giving up the fight against bureaucracy and desperate to find a solution. Any solution to salvage the charter. The tension in the high-ceiling lounge reached a breaking point, the atmosphere thick with the smell of failure and panic. Chief Finn, his hands trembling slightly, dialed the secured emergency line to the holding company that owned the jet. He placed the call on speaker, his voice official and formal. "This is Novatech Maintenance requesting critical owner authorization for N801ND, citing a Level 3 turbine intake sensor error. We require the emergency override code for proprietary software application." Mid-sentence, the sharp digital sound of an incoming call notification echoed clearly across the silent lounge. The sound was coming from a pocket, specifically the worn cargo pocket of David Reyes's uniform trousers. Every eye in the room snapped to David. Amelia, rigid with disbelief, stared as David calmly reached into his pocket and silenced the phone with a simple, practiced tap. Finn, sweat beading on his forehead, looked at the number on his screen, then back at David. He checked the display again, his jaw dropping. "Mr. Reyes, the emergency contact for the aircraft owner is registering right here. It's your personal mobile number." David stepped forward, his eyes locking directly onto Amelia's. The polite, deferential mask was gone, replaced by a deep, weary authority, the authority of someone who controls the game, not just plays it. "That's because I am the owner, Mrs. Vance, and you were calling me." The silence was deafening, the kind of silence that precedes a universe-shattering event. The captain, Sterling, and Amelia were paralyzed. their corporate reality dissolving. David explained it simply calmly, as if describing a minor mechanical fix. The leasing company, Fly Fast Assets, is a blind trust I established 5 years ago, 3 months after Maria passed. He paused, his voice gaining resonance. I bought the N801ND airframe after it was decommissioned from a military contract. It was Maria's favorite model. She always said it was undervalued. I leveraged every cent I had, took out the risk, and personally supervised the full engine refit and updated the avionics based on her original consulting notes. I leased it to Novatech at a competitive rate in exchange for flexible, first-choice co-pilot contracts. The rental income is for Luna's future. It was a silent investment, a hedge. You lease from FlyFast. I am FlyFast. I prefer to operate without corporate attention because, frankly, I don't need the drama of people judging my value based on my uniform. He was not just the owner of the physical asset. He was the master mechanic, the silent investor who financed the asset, and the contract pilot, all rolled into one unassuming man. He represented the true comprehensive value Novatech was attempting to lease. Amelia's face drained of color, going from a stressed crimson to an ash white. The arrogant dismissal, the smug assurance that the owner was an unreachable, faceless entity, it all collapsed on her. She hadn't just rejected a contractor, she had rejected the man with the critical, proprietary knowledge, who also held the ultimate control over the very asset she desperately needed to save her career. The gravity of her prejudice hit her like a physical blow. David took control of the maintenance clipboard from Finn, his movements practiced and authoritative, instantly recognizable as someone who has written maintenance manuals. Where is the log of the last primary sensor check? I want the calibration sheet from 3 days ago. And the atmospheric humidity reading from the exterior sensor array. He immediately pointed to the data on the screen, bypassing the high-level error code and diving straight into the raw telemetry. The Z18 bug, it presents as a critical engine failure, but is actually a logic loop in the humidity sensor that conflicts with the Navi system's altimeter data during high-pressure weather fronts. It's a common flaw on the 98 refit of this model's CPU, a known issue Maria flagged during the refit planning. He looked directly at Finn, cutting through the captain and Sterling entirely. Finn, get me the portable diagnostic unit. Run the code patch I mentioned earlier, the 2-minute upload. I know the proprietary access key. It recalibrates the sensor's reporting window, not the sensor itself, allowing the systems to synchronize. It's a low-liability fix specifically designed for this airframe, and I, the owner, authorize it with a full digital sign-off and liability waiver. This aircraft is my responsibility. In less than 3 minutes, with David supervising Finn step by step, the patch was applied and the system rebooted. The aggressive red light vanished. The screen flashed a serene, all-clear green. The plane was safe, functional, and cleared for immediate flight. The crisis was averted by the man who had been told to stay out of the way and whose opinion was deemed not needed. David signed the technical log with the name David A. Reyes, adding his official owner's digital signature beneath the fixed confirmation. He handed the clipboard back to a shell-shocked Finn, then slowly turned to face Amelia Vance, who stood before him, humbled, exposed, and trembling slightly. She attempted to speak, to offer an immediate recovery plan, but David held up a hand. He didn't yell. He didn't demand a firing. He simply spoke the truth, his voice low, measured, and devastatingly calm, forcing her to hear every word in front of her entire team. Ms. Vance, you rejected a co-pilot with thousands of hours of flight time, intimate technical knowledge of this specific airframe, and the exact proprietary knowledge needed to prevent this 2-hour delay and major financial risk. You rejected him because his uniform wasn't new enough, and his status as a dedicated single father wasn't sterile enough for your corporate aesthetic. He took a step closer, not menacingly, but with a gaze that demanded accountability. You made a judgment based entirely on a superficial, visual profile. That judgment led you to ignore the only person in this room who knew how to save this charter. You chose a polished replacement, Mr. Sterling, who offered textbook solutions that would have caused a 4-hour financial disaster over a true professional with the competence to solve the problem in 3 minutes. He let the silence hang, then delivered the final, crushing blow. You rejected a co-pilot, madam. You didn't reject a contractor. You rejected the owner. And your prejudice, based entirely on optics, almost cost your company one of its most valuable charters and potentially millions in future investments. The aircraft needs judgment and deep technical fluency, not just a perfect profile. The real value on this flight wasn't the Novatech brand name. It was the knowledge and the commitment you chose to dismiss. He walked over to his daughter, picked up his old flight bag, and looked back at Amelia, who was finally seeing him not as a contractor, but as a man of substance, sacrifice, and quiet, immense power. Power derived from ownership and, more importantly, competence. The order of the room in the power dynamic of the entire corporation was reversed utterly and permanently. The transition back to operational readiness was swift, but the emotional climate of the VIP lounge had changed forever. The silence that followed David's revelation was heavy with respect, not pity. Amelia Vance, recovering her composure with the effort of a high-powered executive, walked over to David, who was preparing to leave the airport with Luna. Her apology was public, delivered in front of Captain Hughes, Mr. Sterling, and the entire ground crew, ensuring accountability. Mr. Reyes, she began, her voice steady but laced with genuine contrition and professional respect. My actions were arrogant and short-sighted. My judgment was based on superficial, corporate metrics that completely disregarded true competence and commitment. I offer my sincere professional apology to you and on behalf of Novatech for the costly and nearly catastrophic mistake I made today. She paused, making eye contact with every crew member, her face reflecting her resolve. I will be reporting this failure of process and the resulting solution directly to the CEO, emphasizing the critical role your expertise played. She then extended an immediate official invitation, her tone now one of seeking collaboration, not dictation. The captain and I respectfully request that you, the man who saved this charter, take the official co-pilot seat. Your specific proprietary knowledge of this airframe is now deemed mission critical. Mr. Sterling will fly as a supernumerary observer and receive a necessary lesson in the value of humility. David looked at the cockpit, then back at Amelia. He saw genuine change, not just damage control. I will accept, Miss Vance, he replied quietly. But on one condition, I want a commitment that your crew selection process will be immediately reviewed and audited. I want practical flight hours, technical mastery, and crisis management experience to outweigh profile and arbitrary aesthetic standards. You need pilots, not models, and a system that rewards true value. Amelia readily agreed, seeing the wisdom and necessity in the demand. She knew the Reyes competency metric was already becoming a reality. The change in the flight crew's attitude toward David was palpable. Mr. Sterling, looking profoundly embarrassed, gave David a respectful nod and stepped back immediately. Captain Hughes offered a genuine handshake of gratitude and relief. They no longer saw a cheap contractor. They saw a silent authority, a true professional, and an unexpected owner who had sacrificed prestige for purpose. Just before boarding, Captain Hughes made an announcement over the PA system, ensuring the clients understood the shift in power and the reason for the initial delay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cleared for departure. We owe this smooth takeoff to the vigilance and specific technical expertise of our reinstated co-pilot, Mr. Reyes, who resolved a critical avionics issue in record time. Outweigh. As the final public gesture of honor, Luna was invited into the cockpit for a few precious minutes before takeoff. She sat on her father's lap, wearing an oversized headset, her eyes wide with pride and wonder. She saw her father, the man in the simple uniform, sitting beside the captain, the real power in the room, holding the data key to the entire operation. The ground staff and airport workers, who had witnessed the entire dramatic power shift, learned a fundamental lesson in humility. The man you dismiss for his simple appearance might be the very person who holds the key to the entire operation. The atmosphere in the lounge, once thick with corporate arrogance, began to soften. allowing a new, necessary culture of respect for competence and lived experience to take root. The luxury jet lifted off the runway smoothly, a seamless departure that belied the drama that had unfolded just moments before. Luna, watching from the passenger cabin, pressed her nose against the glass, her heart swelling with the quiet, profound pride that only a child can feel for her hero father. Amelia Vance, true to her word, initiated a systemic overhaul at Novatech Aviation. She didn't just tweak the policy, she instituted the Reyes competency metric, fundamentally changing how pilots and contractors were evaluated. The focus shifted irrevocably away from pedigree and personal finances toward demonstrable crisis management skills and technical expertise. The culture of the company began to change from one of superficial branding to one of core, operational excellence and meritocracy. Amelia, seeking to formally solidify David's role, offered him an executive position, director of flight operations, complete with a massive salary and a guaranteed fixed 9-to-5 schedule. David politely but firmly declined the corporate ladder. "I appreciate the offer, Ms. Vance. I understand the strategic value, but I need flexibility more than I need a title. Luna is my priority, and a fixed schedule means I miss too many school events. I will continue to serve as the co-pilot you originally rejected, maintaining my contract status and my own flexible schedule. My time is not negotiable. However, I will accept a retainer fee for my emergency technical consultation services for the asset." He maintained his silent power. He had achieved the ultimate control, the freedom to choose his work, his schedule, and his status, all while ensuring Luna's stability. He didn't want the spotlight. He simply wanted the right to be seen for his actual value, and he now had the leverage to guarantee it. The aircraft N801ND, often flown by David, continued its quiet, reliable charter schedule. It was now universally nicknamed the Reyes asset within the company, a term used with a mixture of respect and a necessary fear of superficial judgment. The simple single-father co-pilot was never again underestimated. The CEO, informed of the entire saga by Amelia and personally chastened by the near disaster, sent David a short, personal note that summarized the transformation. "Thank you for reminding us that the greatest investments are often the quietest, and the most valuable asset in any operation is always human character and competence, not its cost." En Ordura, David Reyes continued to fly, a humble co-pilot in a world of high flyers, but he flew with the undeniable authority of a man who owned the machine, controlled the operations, and, more importantly, held complete control over his own life schedule. He was a father who chose time over titles, and in doing so, taught a powerful corporation the true definition of power. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Single Dad Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.